Great, so welcome everyone that's joining on the Zoom link, and we're now live as well across LinkedIn and the Escape the City social media channels. Thanks so much for taking the time this Thursday afternoon. Really excited to be joined by 4 public practice associates. So we've got a bumper session over the next half an hour talking about public practice, talking about the public practice associate program, how you can get involved and what it means to be on that program and how that can help you make an impact within the public sector in your career. So public practice work to increase and diversify the built environment working in local government. They transform the status of the public service and support those working within it to lead the way. To do this, they've created a unique professional placement program specifically designed for built environment practitioners and their public authority hosts. They offer professionals currently in the private sector an attractive route into working for the public sector, whilst also celebrating and capturing leading industry knowledge and sharing it across the wider sector. The associate program itself is a 12-month placement program for mid-career individuals looking for a career change. You'll be placed in paid work placements at public sector organisations looking for new skills and expertise. So we're joined by 4 of those associates today. We've got Karolina, Johnny, Bryony and Jenny, who are currently on the public practice associate program. The deadline for for applications for the next program starting in October is midday on Monday, 30th of May. So you can get all the insights from these 4 today. You've got the weekend to get your application in, and the deadline, as I said, is midday on the 30th of May. So I'm going to fling it over to the current associates. Perhaps Karolina, if you'd like to start, let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to dig into a bit more detail on the program itself and the takeaways that you can get by going down this route. So Karolina, it'd be great if you can introduce yourself. If anyone on the Zoom would like to drop in questions throughout the session, we'll get to those towards the end of the half an hour.
Hi, I'm Karolina Hall. I'm a planner by profession. I'm originally from New York, and I'm now working as a principal planner in strategic applications in DM at Enfield Council. Ironically, I've almost always worked in public sector, but I can talk a little bit more later about the difference that joining public practice has made to my career path. I'll hand it over to Bryony.
Thanks, Karolina. Hi there. Yep. So I'm a qualified architect based in London with kind of specialism in residential-led master planning and housing. I currently work at London Borough of Ealing, where I'm a senior region officer. Yeah, and of course doing the public practice. Yeah, of course. I'll hand over to Jenny, who's next on the screen.
I'm working at Camden Council as a Principal Generation Officer, and my background is in interior architecture, having worked for Panarin Prasad and big corporations like Mace, and then I moved into kind of co-design and co-creation with communities and worked for Groundwork charity, working on kind of green space co-design.
Great, thank you. And Johnny, round us out.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Johnny. I'm an urban design officer at Watford Borough Council. Before that, I was like an architect like Bryony. I was working at a Swiss practice called Hertzog de Meuron on major schemes in and around London. Yeah, that's me.
Great, thank you. Such a diverse cast of characters. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. And perhaps if we could start by just going around the room and going into why you decided to apply for the Public Practice Associate Program, how you came across it, and what made you decide to apply to go on this 12-month placement course. Bryony, maybe if we start with you.
Goodness, okay, pressure. I think moving over to the public sector is something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. Ultimately, I think in my work as an architect, I was sort of working more and more on sort of early stages of a project from kind of concept stage, and I really kind of saw sort of local authorities and really the public sector for sort of setting sort of the benchmark for sort of the standards and really the kind of the nature and brief of those projects. So as an architect, I really felt that actually I was kind of picking up those projects really quite late in the process. So yeah, and so it's kind of a bit of a bit of a dream for me to kind of be working in regeneration now, and the public practice kind of route has kind of really helped me sort of break into a new sector really that otherwise was quite well, I viewed it as quite difficult to get into.
Great, thank you. And over to you, Karolina. Does that reflect your experience as well?
Yeah, it certainly has. I like that Bryony used the word dream. It's been really great, and I did have high expectations for what the public practice experience would be like, and certainly what I've experienced so far has met those expectations. For me, again, having worked in public service for both in New York and in London, the difference that I was kind of wanting to get out of this is I think public practice has a very thoughtful approach to placing associates with their authorities and making sure that it's a right fit and that there will be kind of that the benefit is maximized for all parties. And what I suppose that the approach is a little less conventional. So whereas you see sort of job posts coming up with local authorities that have very defined sets of requirements and specs, public practice flexes that a bit, and that's really what I was looking for, is kind of a less conventional job description, and one where I could go into the job as well, and be able to kind of shape it, and hopefully be among managers and people who are comfortable with that, and that's certainly in Enfield that's certainly been the case. So again, just a really, really positive experience and a unique one in that way.
Amazing. And Jenny, maybe you could talk about your reasons for joining, but also give a bit more detail on how those placements come about and how much input you have as an associate into choosing your placement, or whether it's assigned to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my experience definitely resonates with both Karolina and Bryony, I think, in terms of like working kind of further up the brief, and in terms of the role kind of definitely feeling like it was kind of made to fit, I think, a little bit with me, and like able to kind of bring together a lot of my very kind of quite, I guess, broad kind of experience into kind of one package, which I never thought would actually kind of be the case, but actually somehow it's able, we're able to do that. And I suppose, yeah, the role was kind of offered to us, or offered to me, but it did feel like it definitely kind of met all of the different aspects of my experience. And I don't know how much kind of work behind the scenes was done, I guess, in that from public practice and Camden kind of working together on creating that role, because it was a new role, and I think like 90% of roles in public practice are like new roles for the local authorities and kind of made to fit in some ways. And I think also kind of, as Karolina said, there's so much kind of scope once you start as well to kind of make that role kind of your own, and make sure it kind of fits around what you're able to offer and what you want to work on, which is amazing.
Great, thank you so much. So you guys are just over halfway through, I guess, the program at the moment. And Johnny, if we can move on to you and just discuss how the associate program itself has supported you in your new role. So throughout that placement so far, what sort of support have you had from public practice through that time?
So I mean, it's been very supportive overall. I mean, we meet as an associate group every 2 weeks on a Friday for a whole day of kind of, we call them R&D days. So we meet and we're given kind of lectures by leading professionals and former associates on their experience in the public sector and how we can influence change. And we have very lively discussions on those days where we talk about our experiences so far in public sector. So yeah, it's been, I think, we'd all agree that we have a great support network as associates as well. We're always talking to each other about our own struggles or successes in local authority, how it's so different to the private sector. So yeah, I think if it wasn't for public practice, I think I'd be a lot more hesitant about the move to public sector. I wouldn't know where to start. I wouldn't have known what kind of role to apply for. All of the job descriptions would have been quite intimidating and would have had a lot of things that I wouldn't feel that I could necessarily demonstrate I had the ability to do. But yeah, public practice is a way of kind of just really encouraging us to use our skills in new ways. So yeah, it's been yeah, really supportive, I would say, and without it I wouldn't be in the public sector. I don't think.
Great, that's such a good answer, thank you. Often we find with these programs that peer-to-peer network is so important in helping that transition throughout the program, as well as the support that you get from the placement organization itself. But something you touched on there that I think would be interesting for people on this webinar, for people that haven't worked in the public sector before, what are the key differences you're finding in your role now compared to the private sector? I don't know if that's something that Bryony you came very much from the private sector, if that's something you want to start with.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a key difference for me is that my network and the range of people that I kind of speak to on a daily basis, and obviously professional capacity and personal capacity has expanded massively. Because of course I've been working on numerous different projects in private practice, and of course with the various consultant teams, client teams, people within my office. I kind of naively hadn't really understood just how huge a council is, and the range of things and roles that exist. I mean, it's going to take, we're only halfway through the program, but it's going to take so many more months for me to still sort of like meet all the people that I'm meant to be meeting and talking to and working with over the council. And of course that brings its challenges. You'll hear this phrase kind of silo working a lot, which is something to certainly kind of overcome. But I think for me, I guess just the range of people, range of different disciplines that I kind of am working with is great. And of course with that brings sort of the range of subjects and different conversations, which has really sort of, I suppose, widened the scope of the work that I do compared to the private sector, where it's so very delivery focused ultimately, because, well, particularly as an architect, you're not the client, so it's kind of dictated to you. But I suppose being on the client side, I think so. My network has expanded.
Thank you.
Might look at that.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Jenny, does that reflect your experience too?
Yeah, definitely. I think in order to make things happen, you do have to kind of work across so many different sectors of the council, which is obviously, can be a really exciting process. I think also, like, everyone's just like, it's really cheesy, but everyone's really passionate about, kind of what they do and making change in the borough. And to kind of have that in your day-to-day working life is like so refreshing and kind of energizing, I guess. There are kind of, I guess, lots of processes to go through, and you do have to kind of use that kind of network and things, but I don't think that's necessarily any different than, say, like a big organization like Mace and stuff like that. So great,
thank you. And Karolina, you've had a varied career, as you said, within the public sector across the United States and now in the UK. But having now come onto the public practice program, what's been the most valuable lesson that you've learned so far in the last 6 months or so?
I've learned a lot that's very, very valuable. Again, I think this group, well, everyone in the cohort's really, really lucky with their placements. I'm really lucky to be at Enfield. And again, they've been very open to kind of the ideas and perspectives that I've offered, and what I think what has made the difference, what has distinguished this public sector role from others, is that there's, I think as public practice associates, we kind of get this like cheeky permission to sort of to say we're from public practice, we're here to sort of add that additional bit of value and that additional bit of perspective, and maybe, I mean, it sounds corny, but left field thinking, or whatever it might be that you really want to kind of impart, and you do kind of with that cap on, you get that permission, and hopefully it sort of resonates, and it's something that the people around you are open to. And in my case, certainly have been. They sort of respect the fact that that I'm here not just to do the job, but to kind of do that extra bit. And I think that that's really what drives a lot of people's interest in joining public practice, and what it allows and supports. I think that Johnny really articulately set out.
Yeah, that's a question that often gets asked, is how associates get received coming into local authorities or coming into different organizations from the private sector. And I don't know if one of you wants to pick up on that a bit further and talk about how that's been received in your respective local authorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a overall positive, I would say, for me. I think coming from private sector, you kind of have an excuse to almost make mistakes, and that's been quite refreshing. I think because I was in private architectural practice like Bryony, I do think that sometimes you do feel like a bit of a cog within this very well-oiled machine sometimes. And I think as someone who comes in, admittedly not from a public sector role, I mean, I think it is a nice kind of inlet into the organization. And I think everyone's quite curious to know what you can bring. And yeah, like Jenny said, it's kind of up to our interpretation as well, to a large degree, how we choose to kind of spend our time, and what projects we can feel we can add value to. So yeah, I think I think a lot of people are just very curious as to like what you're doing there. But I think after a few months, people kind of seem to be getting used to us being there. So seems good so far for me.
And is that the same for the rest of you, for Bryony and Jenny as well, across your placements?
I could go, yeah, absolutely, very positive. I think Johnny's point around some people are familiar with public practice, some people aren't. Ultimately, these authorities have obviously essentially signed up to the programme to hire people through the programme. So you'd expect in your kind of immediate network, people would be familiar with the programme and kind of the value that you bring through that kind of extracurricular stuff. Perhaps, yeah, the challenge is, it's not really a challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, you sort of settle into the job, and it kind of doesn't really matter when you're talking to lots of people that you are from public practice. It's just that it's something that you have in sort of your back pocket, because it's a whole, I suppose, yeah, network, but a huge amount of resource, and references and case study examples and all this kind of thing that you sort of bring out when relevant, which is really great. But I guess I would say that I think it really depends on authority to authority. My experience is very positive, but I'm also, in a team where other members have been kind of hired through or partnered through the public practice programme. I'm sure that would vary massively to somebody who is sort of the first person from public practice within that team or that council. So I think I'm quite lucky in that sense. Jenny, I don't know if you have a different experience.
Yeah, I guess mine's similar in that I think I'm the 4th or 5th public practice associate to be hired by Camden. So I guess for me, there was almost like a bit of kind of getting over that pressure at the beginning of like, oh, you're in public practice, so you're going to be amazing. But yeah, again, it shows, I guess, there's a lot of support from other associates that are already here, which is really great. And that kind of you're part of that kind of associate kind of alumni or current cohort kind of group. And also, I guess it just shows that, Camden has that support for you and kind of recognises the worth of the public practice programme and being part of that. So it's good.
That's great to hear. And as current associates, how do you think having gone through this process and this program and the placement will influence your future career? It's quite a broad question. I don't know who wants to step up to that one.
I'm happy to go first on that one.
Go on,
yeah, I guess partly because the role does bring together like design and strategy and engagement, which I've kind of done maybe more like separately in different roles like over the years, is actually able to kind of bring all that together. So I think like moving forward, whether it's at Camden or elsewhere, able to kind of bring all those things together as a package, and really kind of use all of the kind of skills and experience that I've kind of gathered over the last 10 years is kind of amazing. So I think definitely be able to kind of move forward with all of those things. And I guess, yeah, just kind of being part of the program, part of that network, is just like an amazing kind of career opportunity.
Great. And same question for you, Karolina.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of reinstilled or reconfirmed kind of good habits. The nice thing about public practice is you are in the workplace and you kind of interpret what's happening around you, and you pick up on little things. If I could, I'd make this one small change and it would have kind of relatively big impact. And then you bring it back to your cohort on the Friday and you kind of talk about these little things, and other people have made the same observations, and you just realize over time you kind of develop these themes around these things, good communication and working across disciplines, and you just and then you start to kind of embed that in the way you work and the way you think and the way you approach your work. And I hope that kind of sticks, certainly with me, and that I do kind of take that forward as I continue my work. And for me personally, I would like to stay in the public sector. And I think this is also kind of underscored that the value of working in the public sector for me. And it's just a strong match for me personally.
That's great. That's such a powerful message. I guess you spent your career in the public sector, but also a reflection of the power of the program as well. And does that resonate with you, Bryony, too? Would you now stay in the public sector as a result of going through this program?
Yes, definitely. I think it's just worth bearing in mind, though, that I think the way the public practice works is that I think everybody sort of on a reasonably, I think it's like a year or maybe sort of a year and a half or 2 year contract. So in that sense, it's not necessarily extremely long term. However, I'm kind of lucky enough that I'm in a position with Ealing where I think there's a lot of investment in the regeneration team. So I think it's an opportunity there to stay at Ealing for sort of beyond a year, which I'd really like to do. But I think regardless, I think public practice has been really critical for me being able to make that quite, let's say, tricky transition. And there are the kind of public practice does ensure that there's kind of like a framework in place that sort of this network, sort of wider connections with other cohorts beyond our kind of immediate group this year. I'm certain that will kind of last for the kind of years to come. So I'm kind of really interested to see sort of what opportunities again that network, that professional network kind of offers over the next couple of years, which is quite exciting. So yeah, I hope to stay at Ealing, but also kind of open-minded to what the future in public sector holds, which is good.
Great stuff. We've actually had an audience question, and Johnny, I don't know if you could take this bit along those lines about what opportunity set is there for people that go through the public practice program? So is there an opportunity to roll off from your current placement into a permanent role? What support is provided by the public practice team in that respect?
Yeah, so I believe that there is an option to extend your placement at no additional cost to the council. So it's quite a good incentive for councils to kind of keep you on because they don't need to give any extra money to public practice if they want to keep you on. We're not at that stage yet, but I do believe that there is some support nearer the end of the program to kind of ask us the question, what do we want to do next? Did we enjoy our time? Do we want to stay in the public sector, or do we want to wrap things up and go back to what you're doing before? So yeah, I think that those conversations will come. But yeah, if it's like anything like the support we've had already, then I'm sure it'll be very well transitioned. I would say from my perspective, I do see the pros and cons of both the public and the private sector, and it's been so informative for me. I think I'm happy in the public sector right now, but for those who are worried about kind of jumping ship, I feel that my ability to practice as a private practitioner has only strengthened through my time in the public sector. And I feel like I've got a lot more options available to me, but I haven't necessarily closed any doors in terms of traditional practice or the private sector. So yeah, it's kind of, yeah, a very low risk option, I would say, to do public practice.
Great. Sounds like there's a wealth of opportunities ahead for you. It's great to hear. And there's a few more questions coming in from the audience. So it's great to see that what you guys are saying is really resonating. Someone has asked, did you know what type of role you wanted to do before joining the program? I guess how much does the program shape the role that you end up doing? Jenny, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually working more, as I said, in kind of co-design engagement in my previous role. And I actually reached out to some of the public practice kind of current kind of associates and people, kind of alumni, like when I was doing the interview process, to kind of understand more about their roles and understand like what kind of role that I would be looking for. And I guess through that, I kind of decided that, yeah, an engagement role wasn't the kind of thing I wanted to do. I just wanted to do more than that and kind of bring more design back into my role. So I think maybe that's a good way of doing it. I think most people are super friendly, and you know, if you kind of reach out to them and have a chat with them about their role or previous role, they'd be happy to do that.
That's a great tip. Thank you so much, Jenny. Armando has asked a question, having worked overseas for the public and private sector in urban development and mobility, he'd like to know if he could be a right fit within public practice's associate program. I guess Karolina, sorry, that might resonate with you.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the fact that I do carry it, the majority of my kind of work experience is foreign. And so I knew that going through public practice would give me that little extra bit of support in order to kind of find my feet in while working here. And that's certainly been the case, both with the kind of the hard knowledge that public practice offers, as well as the networking and being exposed to other people's experiences. So I definitely say that for someone who has a lot of overseas experience, that would be transferable. I'd say public practice is really, really helpful in supporting that transition.
Excellent. I hope that's useful, Armando. It sounds like you've got a green light there to be a good fit within the program. As Jenny said, there is a lot of information about roles and sectors on the public practice website, which is publicpractice.org.uk. We've got one final audience question. I think we'll squeeze it in before 1 o'clock from Catherine. Thanks so much to the panelists for sharing their experience. The one question relating to the roles: if you have experience that does not fit just one role, do the associates have advice on how to approach this within the application? Bryony, maybe, or Johnny, I don't know who wants to take that.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I mean, I think my role is quite representative of that. I have some experience in kind of digital research and working in game design as well as architecture, and so in my urban design role, I kind of lead some digital planning projects within the council while also inputting urban design advice. I would say let the public practice team know about all of your skills and all of your experiences, and it only expands the opportunities that may present themselves to you within the matchmaking process with local authorities. You'll either get offered one of those, a role linked to one of those skills, or you might be as lucky as me and get a role which fits both or multiple skills. So yeah, I think that sort of background is perfect for public practice, and yeah, I think they welcome interdisciplinary people. So yeah.
Thanks, Johnny. And maybe to finish, if we could just go around the room, and if you each have one piece of advice, given that the deadline is Monday midday, if you have one piece of advice for those on the fence currently considering applying for the program. This is really putting you on the spot, so no worries if it's a tricky question, but any advice that you have for those who could be considering an application to the Public Practice Associate Program over the next couple of days?
So I'll just chime in. I'd say, because it's just jumped into my brain, but I'd say be honest in your application rather than trying to present yourself in a way that you think is going to be present itself well to public practice. Just be honest and kind of put it all out there, because public practice really appreciates that and values that. And I think to Johnny's point, that'll help to get you the best match.
Great, thanks, Karolina. Any more tidbits of advice from the rest of the panel?
I think be seen to be proactive as well. So I think, yeah, I think Karolina's point about being honest, I think, you know, it's really easy to be honest and state all the reasons why, you know, you're frustrated in the private sector, or, you know, all the things that are wrong with the private sector. We, you know, we all share those yeah, we all share those frustrations. So use your application to, I think there's the option with the kind of the 4 questions and your answers, I think, where you can be I mean, you don't have to necessarily provide solutions, but I think just to show that you have enthusiasm and yeah, you're kind of proactive and responsive to those issues, and you kind of want to be a part of a group that's questioning those things and trying to kind of information share and be a part of positive change in the built environment. I think, yeah, I think that will come through kind of in your language and in your questions. Because ultimately, yeah, the public practice lot have sort of read thousands of these applications before, and they can, yeah, they've seen it all, and they can, yeah, they can read through it. So I think that's good advice.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Bryony. Well, thank you so much, you four, for taking the time today to talk through your experiences. It does sound like a fascinating program, and like you are having such a meaningful impact in the public sector across your various local authorities. And I think the engagement as well from the audience is a real reflection of how interesting it was to hear you guys talk through your experiences. So thank you to you four. The applications, as we mentioned, thank you, Bryony, also for jumping in on that final question in the chat box. The applications close for the October cohort of the Public Practice Associate Programme on Monday, the 30th of May at midday. So do please get your applications in over the weekend. There's a wealth of information on the Public Practice website at publicpractice.org.uk. So please do go on there for any further FAQs. And reach out to the team with any questions that you might have. But I hope this has been useful. Thanks again to the panel for taking the time out today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you, guys.